Hello to my neighbors and the rest of the people of America. I would like to humbly talk to you today about what's going on in this country and around the world. You know, on a daily basis, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. Some days I'm filled with hope, some days I'm filled with despair. Hope, because I see people are waking up and seeing what's going on. Despair, because I see us being turned against each other through lies and distortions. You know, historically, I was raised a Goldwater baby. I was one of those little children dressed in a Goldwater t-shirt that mom and dad used to hold up in the air during Goldwater speeches. And I was taught when I was 9 years old. My father made me read a book called None Dare Call It Treason, which pointed out what the problems were in this country, and that was corruption. That the people we elect to office, they speak a good line when they want to get elected, but once they assume their position of power and go inside the beltway, they get corrupted. There are very few who can handle that corruption. So how do we get out of this? You know, I just watched Egypt. I watched as the citizens of Egypt took down a dictator relatively peacefully. Never heard of that before. And what gave them the opportunity to do that was the social networking, was the web, allowing people to talk to each other. We haven't had this in the history of man. You know, and our founders, when they started this country, they realized one of man's problems, and that was that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there are people who want positions of power, and these corrupt individuals will gravitate towards them because this is what they want to do. They want to control other people. You know, and our founders understood that, and that's why they tried to balance out the power. And that's why in our Declaration, not our Constitution, but our Declaration, which was why we got started, the first three words of "we the people" were put in such large font because that's where the power must lie. Because you cannot corrupt all of us. If you keep the control into the hands of all of the people, corruption cannot exist. So then our founders went on to this unsurmountable task of writing up a constitution, which was very hard, and there was a lot of screaming going on. But they managed to come up with the minimum that we could agree on, and to protect the liberties of the individual citizen, and to try to make sure that nobody had too much power. We have lost that. We have a few people in control now who run everything. And through central planning in some big place in Washington, D.C., they think that they can pass legislation for New Orleans and Montana the same way, when they're two completely different separate places with completely different separate people. Now, how can we use this technology we have today to save this country and yet retain the integrity of our Constitution? I believe it's very easy. Sometimes I'd like to think of what Jefferson would have done if there was an internet back in the 1700s. You know, and how we would have this representative government. Well, now the question is, can we represent ourselves individually? Can we have a quote-unquote webolution where we the people take over this country peacefully, the way it was supposed to be done? You know, when we go to vote, I don't know where you guys are, but a lot of us vote in local churches or local schools, and they set up the little voting booth. And inside, when I go to my local church down here where they have the voting, inside the church, once you get in there, they even divide you even further into little tiny electoral districts of maybe 700-800 people that we all go in and vote for who we want. And I share a lot with these people. One, they're my neighbors, so I share a tremendous amount with these people. But I also share all of the elected representatives on the local level, the state level, the county level, the federal level. We all vote for the same people. I believe each one of these little districts needs a social networking site. Someplace where we can connect into our government and into our representatives and insist that our representatives give us transparency, which people get awards for, but we never seem to accomplish it. Where our representatives in all of these levels of our many governments can give us copies of all the legislation so we can vote on them. You know, we hear that there's parts of the government that have become redundant, that's just wasting money. You know, why don't we list out every department of the government, how much each one costs, and allow the people of the country to have line item vetoes. You want us, the people, to do the budget as we should? Let us do the cuts. Because we send you to Washington to do the cuts, and you don't cut. You get lobbied, millions of dollars, billions of dollars spent by lobbyists to make sure they don't get cut. Well, you know, if everybody was voting locally, we could make the decision, and it would be a correct decision because we know what is best for us. Now, how can we get power in this sort of a situation? Well, first you have to say, will the voting work? Can we have something that will work locally like this and be honest? You know, when I go online and I watch PayPal, I watch MasterCard, I watch Visa, we do that. We spend money. We keep good track of it. We make sure, you know, we have a couple little problems, but I think the problems are probably even less than our voting problems. And it works very well. And I'm sure we can set this up locally and traceable so we can keep it honest. And then we have to have a quorum. We have to have enough of people hooked into the system to make a difference. How many people do we need for a quorum? In my state, I just watched as our governor got elected with, 1.9 million votes in a state of 19 million people. I watch as our president gets elected with, 50 million people in a country of 350 million people. This is the problem. Many of us are unattached. Many of us have unplugged from our government. That's why we get the government we deserve. The question, we've been watching Jesse Ventura, and he was on The View, and I think it was Whoopi asked him, well, what can we do? You know, and then he was on the Joy Behar show, and she said, well, what can we do? Everybody just feels so hopeless because we have no power as the people. And we, the people, are supposed to have the power in this country. We have to turn it back to that direction. We have to put that power back into the hands of the masses and wake up all these people who have given up. They don't vote. They don't care. They watch movies now with Netflix. Nobody cares. You turn on the TV, everybody's screaming at each other. We have to stop this. Now, I have a lot of faith in the American people, in the individual, to make the correct decision, because I watch individuals start businesses, and anybody who can keep themselves above floating in this economy is an amazing person. I mean, they're juggling bills back and forth. They're doing whatever they can to survive. I mean, the American people are very resilient. We have tremendous ideas, except we're stopped from doing them through many of the regulations and legislation that's passed by our lawmakers. Well, maybe we should list all these laws and all these regulations, and we, the people, all of us, should vote for it. Think of it. We could get rid of all the lobbying. We could probably even get rid of many of the elections. Not get rid of them, but just spend a lot less money on them. And all those billions of dollars could be used to help some of the people who are less fortunate in this country who need some help. We're not getting help from our Central Plain government right now. We the people can run this government. You know, Abraham Lincoln said, we have to make sure that a government of, by, and for the people never perishes from the face of the earth, because that is the American experiment, that we, the people, can run our own lives and run our own government. And we're failing at that. We have all turned off. Nobody pays attention anymore. I mean, corruption is a big problem. But I think if we, the people, run the country, I think we can get rid of some of this corruption. And I think we can probably get rid of 60 to 70% of the people working in Washington and working locally. You know, you have to open your eyes a little bit to a free society and what liberty means and how this would actually function, which is for another YouTube, because it would take too long to explain here. I'll put some more up explaining different things. But we don't need this. We're supposed to have a small, limited government run by we, the people, all of us. Come on, Mark Zuckerberg. You made Facebook. Why don't you do something better? Why don't you make some sort of a social networking site that we can use to run our government? And then if we had this together, that we, the people, were running the government, I'll bet you then there's something we can show to Egypt, to these wonderful Egyptian people, and saying, instead of looking at them and saying, hey, have a democracy ruled by some corrupt individual, we can say, look, this is how you can have a government of we, the people. Because I know between all of you, you will make the decision correctly. And as for war, which is, I hate war. But when it's needed, because there are evil people in the world. But we're only supposed to go to war with an act of Congress, which means the majority of the people of the country would have to agree to go to war. And I believe if you went around the countries of this world, the majority of Iranians don't want to go to war. The majority of Egyptians don't want to go to war. The majority of people do not want to go to war. All the world over, it's so easy to see people everywhere just want to be free. But it's people. We have to get them out of this controlled environment. So if you think this has any merit, please pass this off to Jon Stewart, to John Stossel, to Bill O'Reilly, to Bill Maher, all opposite sides of the spectrum, where all of them will agree that we, the people, have to run the government and get away from these corrupt politicians who want to do nothing but control us and buy a building in the Caribbean someplace to escape. Because I tell you something, liberty, well, it's just refreshing. Nothing tastes like it. So people, let's take our country back peacefully through this technology that we have. Because if we do not, I fear that this technology is going to be turned around and used against us in some horrible, tyrannical dictatorship. You're watching it now in the airports. It's wrong. It should not be like this. That's all I can say. So, for peace, people, let's come together. And on another point, if this does happen, it's very easy to get together. We don't even need gas. I only have to deal with the 700 people in my neighbors. I can do it by walking around and talking to every single one of them. I don't have to drive anywhere. Neither do you. This is all community. This is all individual. This is all kitchen table politics, if you want to call it. But we need a webolution, and we need it now. Because if we don't do it in the next 2 years, it's going to be over. Peace, people.